Welcome to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors. Dr. Allen chats with successful investors exploring their journey from setback to triumph. Through this window, we glimpse the truths that inspire our guests to invest abundantly and flourish in all areas of life. And now your host, Dr. Allen.
Welcome to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors, where we delve deep into the lives of our successful guests to find inspiration for our own growth and development. I'm your host, Dr. Allen. With me today is the founder and current owner of Bakerson. Growing up in the bakery business in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, Bruce wanted to pay homage to his now late father, hence the name Bakerson. After trying his hand in a few different ventures, he found his passion in real estate. He has a proven track record of success throughout Bakerson's 18 years, with thousands of individual units bought, repositioned, and sold. He has overseen all aspects of the business, including operations, acquisition, project leadership, equity fund management, property specification, syndication, legal, and finance. His focus is finding good deals, while his passion is serving the residents by providing them with one of their basic human needs, shelter. Prior to launching Bakerson in 2002, he served on the acquisition team at a Phoenix-based real estate investment company. Welcome my guest today, Bruce Wuollet. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yep, that's good. Thanks, Alan. It's good to be here.
Good to have you, Bruce. I love the name of your business there. It brings to mind Erik Erikson, who was a renowned psychologist in the mid-20th century. In fact, students in general psychology are still going to study his social development theories. But he took, he was abandoned by his father as a young child, and so he always felt different than other children and didn't feel like he had a parent to lead him. So he took on his own name, Erik, which was not his birth name, and since he felt like he raised himself, he called himself Erik Erikson. So I like how you have paid homage to your father there. It's a clever name anyway, without the homage there. Has a good ring to it. So, Bruce, let's get into you, and let's learn a little bit about who you are and where life started for you. So if you could share a memorable time and a memorable experience from your childhood that you would consider, looking back on it, to have been a formative experience.
Oh, I'd love to do that. I'm the third oldest of 13 children. Grew up in the bakery business in Minneapolis, the Wuollet Bakeries, which is still in business and thriving quite well. And at 11 years old, I wanted a paper route really, really bad. I had subbed for some of our neighbor boys. When they'd go out of town, I would do their paper route for them. So I told my dad I wanted a paper route. He said, you don't want something to tie you down. You're 11 years old in sixth grade. It's not really a good thing for an 11-year-old to tie down so soon. And so after much negotiation, I lost that negotiation, but I won myself a job alongside my dad working at the bakery. Oh. So I'd go in on Saturdays at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was a kind of an assistant, probably more got in the way than otherwise, but at the time I thought I was pretty productive and a hard worker. He didn't fire me, so I guess that's a good thing. But and then I stayed there for 15 years, and so that to me was a very memorable, positive experience, and it taught me the life of negotiations at a very young age.
Well, that's a good way to learn how to be a hard worker, for sure. I was in the restaurant business myself, and I know how demanding the food industry is. So a good way to get your feet on the ground, for sure. And so as you said you were there for 15 years, so obviously there was something that moved you towards something else. And yet at the same time, it sounds like you found some fulfillment there from a very early age. So what was it that prompted you to move on from the bakery business?
Well, there was one thing my dad taught was that there's no reason why you shouldn't get up and love what you do every day. He says, in this country with the opportunities, that it's up to you to get up and love what you do. And there's two ways to do that. You could get it where you could make the job you have enjoyable and find a way to love it, or you could pursue opportunities that feed the passion. And I believe I tried both. I started out, assisting my dad, and then I got into I was washing dishes and I became a baker. I did that for a number of years. I worked in the cake department at the bakery and had my hand in cake decorating, and found out that some things I could do, I was really well coordinated, and other things not so much. So I was more on the production side, and I worked in the store serving the customers. The last 4 years I was there, I was in charge of the delivery system and the logistics, both internal and external. There was 3 bakery locations, and it was a very busy time. During the summer months, there was as many as 80 wedding cakes to be delivered throughout the Twin Cities on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so a big part of my week was preparing for that, as well as, like I said, internal transfers between the bakeries. And after trying all those things, I really wanted to move up in the business. And there was other people who were ahead of me, that, cousins and other family members that had been there longer and had a pretty secure position. So I found out it was getting a little bit crowded for me to try to squeeze into that level. And I thought, I'm going to try my hand in something else. And so I sat down with my dad and I told him that, I've tried everything I can here, and it's been a wonderful experience, but I don't love what I do anymore. And I want to find my passion. I want to find my way. And so then I pursued sales. 4 years. I was executive recruiter, affectionately known as a headhunter in the technology industry, and did that 2 years in Minneapolis, 2 years in Chicago. And I found out that I really liked the people connecting business. But actually, I didn't find that out then. I found that out later, because I had left the bakery and tried out that business. And then I got into medical sales and found medical device sales, and found out that the tangible goods were not as exciting to me as the intangible. The life experiences were more exciting for me. So tried drug education for a year for corporate America to teach them how to identify drug use in the workplace. That basically broke even after a year. So I said, well, that's not what I want to do. And then I was introduced to real estate. And it was 2001 when I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it lit a spark. And I have learned that some of the largest wildfires, in fact, we just experienced that here in Cave Creek, just a couple miles from our office this last week. A small spark from a guy doing some weed whipping in his yard lit a couple thousand acre fire. Mm. And so I looked at that as I was watching. I said, that's what happened to me. A small spark lit a fire in me in real estate. And that's where I really got passionate about that. So back to why I left the bakery business it was a little bit crowded. I didn't see me fulfilling my desires in time. I think over time it probably would have or could have, but I wanted things sooner and at a younger age.
I like the wisdom of your dad and him telling you that you need to love what you do, and there's 2 ways to do it: either learn to love what you're doing or to find something else. That's good wisdom there. An interesting path that you traveled there, and I like how, I'm sure it must have been frustrating in some way, shape, and form going from job to job as you were looking for the thing that was the right thing and the right fit for you. But you kept after it there. How did you go from, it seems to me like a really big step from the bakery business to the headhunting business. How'd you make that transition?
Well, I had looked at many different jobs. I was pouring through the want ads. This is pre-internet. So I was pouring through the want ads and looking for ways and kind of studying that, where can a person make a decent income in a short time period?
Mm-hmm.
And I kept coming to the sales. And so I had sat down with Tim Richards, the founder of TRE at the time, and became Paragon Search and Solution headhunting firms, and or recruiting firms, more correct, I suppose. But when I sat down with him, he told me, he said, yeah, I'd love to hire you. But in there, I found out that he had made a bet with one of the other employees that I wouldn't be back for a second interview and that I would soon go back to work for Dad. And that lit a big fire under me that I'm going to prove him wrong, that somebody just told me you can't do something or you won't do something. And I became his top producer for 4 straight years. And he'd been in business many years. And yet I had smashed the records and became the top producer 4 years running. And so that to me was like, okay, I can do this. Mm-hmm. And so it was fulfilling in that way that somebody had said. And everywhere else I went, they promised the moon. And he did the opposite. He said, I'm not promising you anything. If you can't get up and go to work and really perform and follow a plan, then you can't work here. He says, I have a plan that works. You have to follow the plan. So I did, and it worked.
Yeah, proven plans are good things to have at hand there. Well, tell us I'm interested in this because, quite frankly, to me, headhunting doesn't sound like a particularly rewarding field. It sounds like a really high stress, a lot of pressure, and not much reward except perhaps maybe financial. So, where did you find meaning in that? Because you stayed there for 4 years. So where did you find meaning in that?
The success that I had is when I placed somebody in a firm, they stayed there quite a long time. And I found some of that out later, but some of the business was, it sounds like it's not fulfilling, but yet there was individuals who were stuck in a job, and I put myself in their shoes. I too was stuck in a sense that I really couldn't advance where I wanted to go, where I was at. And sometimes the best way to move up is to move out, and that's okay. That happens quite a bit. People branch out on their own. Sometimes you can be an entrepreneur, but sometimes you can't. And these people had great skill sets that I placed, and great mindset. And when they started their new career, time and time again, they called and thanked me for the opportunity that I presented to them. Sometimes they weren't really looking for work, but yet work had found them, or looking for a career change, a job, not a career change, but a company change. And what I was looking for is individuals that were good at what they did, but felt they were at a dead end. And I guess in a way it was mirroring what I had experienced myself. But looking back, I probably didn't realize that. I wasn't that deep of a thinker at the time, but that's where the fulfillment came, as I was able to help companies find quality employees and help quality employees find quality companies to work for. So it was in that sense fulfilling. The downside was it was very grueling. I was the cold call king at the company, and I was 200 to 250 dials a day, and I was pounding the phones from 6 in the morning on the East Coast. 6 in the morning in Minneapolis was 8 in the morning on the East Coast, or 7, and then I would work my way to the West Coast, and I'd be the first one in the morning, the last one to leave. I always unlocked and locked the place up, even though I wasn't in management. I was always the first one there, last one to leave. But yeah, that's why that's one of the reasons I left, is it was grueling and it was tiring. I did very well financially, but there wasn't the residual that you would need, because when you place somebody, you're not going to go back and move them again. I never moved the same person twice. I didn't feel that was right to, put somebody there and then go take them, put them somewhere else. Like, you have clients and sources, so to speak. So there was that part that wasn't as fulfilling, and you're correct in that. The income was good, but the fulfillment, or the work effort, the amount of work that went into that was just too grueling for me to sustain long term, at least in the way that business model was set up. So that's why I pursued other opportunities.
Yeah. Well, my guest today is Bruce Wuollet, and he is the owner of Bakerson, a real estate company, and he has been in this business for 18 years and has done remarkably well. So, Bruce, as you moved out of the headhunting business, and you'd already told me, but I already forgot. Where did you move from the headhunting?
I had went into medical device sales. A friend of my father's called me from Arizona in Chicago and said, I need a sales rep, and this is the job description. And he outlined the job description. And I went home and talked to my wife, and I said, hey, Randy's hiring, and there might be an opportunity for us in Phoenix. What do you think? She said, yeah, let's go. And we lived in Chicago at the time. And so as soon as I got home, then I talked to my wife, and we discussed it, and I called Randy and said, listen, I found your guy. He says, you did? And I said, yeah, it's me. So that's exciting. And that was like February of 99. And then by May of 99, I had moved to Phoenix.
And you didn't stay there too very long. You were mentioning that the intangible was not as rewarding. I mean, the tangible was not as rewarding as the intangible. And yet you were still working with people. I mean, in sales, that's a people profession. So explain that to us.
Well, the product was it's a very remarkable product that we marketed, and it was it's been used in research for a number of years prior to me getting there, and it was surface electromyography, which is a technical term, and basically it would test muscle function. And the plan was to bring this product into the physical therapy and medical day-to-day field for pre-operation and post-operation rehab and prehab as it would be called. And it was a product, and it served a purpose. But with my experience of what I had learned and what I was doing in recruiting, I was able to bring in a lot of interest into it. But the actual product itself, although remarkable, was tangible. And so I didn't make that leap. That okay, how can I turn this into a service to the industry? Because the industry itself would only take products or modalities in which they could get reimbursements from insurance companies. So we had to work with insurance companies on how to understand what code they could use to reimburse the physical therapist for using this tool. There was so many steps in between that were kind of cold in a sense, that the insurance companies didn't understand the value of this product and how it would help, even though research had proven this product was throughout medical research facilities worldwide and proven effective. There was not a code for the physical therapists and other therapists, manual therapists, to use to get the reimbursement. So the patients would have to pay out of pocket. Well, then we had to sell to a patient that says, hey, this is going to help you. If you do this in prehab, it'll cut down your rehab after surgery. But here's how much, then the therapist would say how much it's going to cost. And it was just too many hurdles for us as a small company to break that market at that time. And so I did that for a year, and financially it was quite a big setback. And so I thought, I got to try something different.
Well, here in the United States, we have probably one of the most complicated and frustrating healthcare systems in the world. So I can certainly understand that. Well, Bruce, tell us what, obviously, what I can tell from the conversation we've had here, that you did follow your father's advice, and you've looked for something in which you can enjoy doing. So tell us about the rewards that you find in the real estate profession.
Yeah, and when I first started, I was a buy, fix, and sell. I thought, I'm going to buy, fix, and sell houses. So we did a couple of those, and I had partnered with a very good friend of mine, Jack Martin, in 2002. And Jack's father worked with my father at the Wuollet Bakery, and they both worked for my grandfather. So the connection goes back pretty deep. And as a note, Jack and I were in business until 2016. And we parted as best friends. We're still good friends. So I'm very, very lucky to have had a business partner, and we parted and remained very good friends, because I've heard horror stories, and we decided when we started that we wouldn't have, if we ever exited, we wouldn't have a horror story, and we didn't. So that was very nice to have him as a business partner for those years and launch our business. But what I was in charge at that time of finding the deals and finding the properties, and he would fix and sell and remodel them or fix them, and then I would would sell them. Well, I was finding at that time more properties than we could possibly fix and sell. And I thought, how do I do this? There's a vacant house there. They want to sell. There's a vacant house over there. There's one over there. And there's one down the road. And, this is 2002 and the fall of 2002. Well, I ran into, Jack's brother was, had attended a boot camp or had signed up for a boot camp, a one-on-one training with Jim Staples out of Texas on how to wholesale properties. And Jack said, hey, my brother wants me to go up there for this training. He can bring on somebody along. I don't want to go. Maybe that sounds like that's up your alley. Why don't you go to Seattle and see what this is about? So I went there, and after a half a day, the lights were going on. I'm intuitive by nature, and I said, I got this. And while I was there was a property that we had tied up that we wanted to fix and sell, but we didn't have the resources, time, and energy to do that. We had 3 other projects already on the books. So this one was just too much. And I found a buyer in Phoenix who bought the property and then closed a couple weeks later. So while I was in Seattle, a man from Texas taught me that you could flip a house while we were in Seattle. I said, well, hey, if a guy from Texas can tell a guy from Phoenix in Seattle to flip a house back home, this is great. So I locked it up, or I did the contract, sent it over. The guy signed it right there. It's like, wow, this works. And I was introduced to wholesaling, which 2003, this particular buyer, Joe, we flipped 47 houses to him in that year. And it got to be such a great relationship. I just call him up and say, hey, Joe, I got this house over here. What would you offer for it? He go look at, hey, I'll offer you 32. Then I'd go back to the seller and say, hey, I can give you 27 for that house. And maybe they take, maybe they wouldn't, go back and forth. And I'd figure in my fee that way. And it's like, wow, that was fun. Let's do it again and again. And we've done over 2,000 homes in that time where we flipped them. But in that itself was not as fulfilling. Sure, it was good money. It was fun to do. But the fulfillment came when we set up a system to sell to homeowners. And this was after the crash in 2007, 8. In 10, 11, and 12, we did really well. Nearly 300 homes a year during that period alone, those 3 years. And over 50%, probably 70% of them were were owner occupied. So we flipped to them. They would get into a house for $45,000. We would help them get the financing. We wouldn't get any money for the financing. We got no money for anything except for just the spread between our purchase price and our sale price. Everything else they did on their own, but we would introduce them to different people. And a couple of years ago, I did a poll on many of those houses and found out that a majority of them, a super majority, were still owned by those people, and most of them had no debt. And so to me, that was, okay, I helped somebody get into a home. Well, as the market shifted and technology shifted and people were going online, auction.com and similar organizations came in to the auction world, then it really changed how we could buy properties, because we could get outbid because the spreads just weren't there to compete, because we didn't have the technology backing. I didn't go down that road of creating those systems. Our system was drive the streets, find the property, or the auction. The auction leads, go bid on them. But they had such slim margins. Some of those people would be able to flip the house in an hour for $1,200 over their price, and that was enough of a machine. They would do that day in and day out. Where our system, we would take it down, clean it up, make it match the city code so that there's no violations. Get rid of graffiti, board up windows, get rid of the weeds, the trash. Then we would present it to investors or homeowners, home buyers. And so that part was very fulfilling. And then, but then we started flipping motels, where we would flip not motels. We did one motel, but we did apartments to other investors and get $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 on a flip. And I was watching what they were doing, and Jack and I are like, you know what? We can do this. We could take that down. We could form the team. We could buy these apartments. We could buy, fix, and sell these apartments. And so we started doing that, and we did 6 buildings in Phoenix. And then after Jack left, and I couldn't find the margins in Phoenix, so we went down to Tucson, and we've done 11 buildings in Tucson. So in 4 or 5, must be 5 years now. I lose track of time. That's one thing. The concept of time to me is, I'll tell my wife something that, oh, you remember last month? And she said, no, that was 6 months ago. So I think it's been 5 years that we've been in, just over 5 years in the apartment business. And the last 4 in Tucson. and it's been really, really rewarding. But what I like, what I see as different than anybody else that I run into is we really care about providing a home to the residents. In fact, our mission is creating communities which are safe, functional, and durable and clean. And our passion is serving the underserved with a focus on the permanent resident, and the permanent resident being one that will never own a home but would like to live in one. It could be by choice or by economics, who knows? But we want to treat them all with the dignity that they deserve. And that's where I feel we are different. And then when I went down there a couple of weeks ago, toured the property, people are happy. It's C-class, so it's not high-end. This isn't a place that many of your listeners would probably live in. It's C-class, it's workforce, and it's the poor. But yet, you go there and I feel safe, and it's clean. Mm-hmm. And the residents there, the turnover has been, we've been cutting that down. And during this current economic pandemic, as it's called, we've been collecting at or above the rates that we did prior to this. And somebody else says, what are you doing different? Well, I just told the property managers that we hired that we're not going to take part in a downturn. We're just going to keep business as usual. And they said, that's right. That's what we're going to do. And we've been collecting at or above what we did in January and February. I think that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, really.
So that's a long explanation. I think I answered your question, but that's where the passion is watching the communities change and having the police departments ask us, why are you guys buying this property? And then 6 months later said, boy, am I glad you bought that property, because we turned it around.
Yeah, that's, I can see why you find reward in that. That is, I've never done that on a community scale, but I've, in the flips or in the renovations I've done, I've really changed houses, and it really is rewarding to see those changes. Well, my last question is coming up here because we're running out of time. My guest today is Bruce Wuollet. And Bruce, before we go to the last question here, can you tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you?
Yes, there's two ways to get in touch. One is email, Bruce, Bruce at Bakerson.com, Bakerson.com, Bruce at Bakerson.com, or they can call myself, 520-808-9111.
We'll have that information in our call notes as well. My last question is, when you come to the end of this journey, how would you like your epitaph to read?
This is something that is the timing on this question is very good. I have been trying to put in writing my why, my purpose. What is my purpose? And I had a feeling for a long time what it was, but mine is to bring people together so that they can lead impactful lives. And that's really what I want. I want to bring people together so they can lead impactful lives. And that is why, as of right now, we have officially changed from buy, fix, and sell to legacy owners. We are moving on where we'll buy a property with no intent to sell and become legacy property owners that I can pass on and people can lead impactful lives.
Well, as you've told your story, that was one thing that was impressive to me, was all of the interrelated connections that have been a part of your entire story, from day one, the connection with your dad, and then from that there were connections that your dad had in the business world that helped you, and from the headhunting business you made connections that led you on to other things. And I can just see that trail throughout your whole life. Is you just seem to have this really unique talent for creating those connections. So a very fitting epitaph there. Well, Bruce, thank you so much for being on the show. It has been a pleasure getting to know you, and I hope we can have some future conversations and get to know one another even better here.
Thank you, Alan. It's a pleasure to be on here, and I appreciate the opportunity, and let's see where this journey takes us.
Thank you for tuning in to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors, brought to you by Steve Talker Capital. Steed Talker Capital works with both new and established investors nationwide, creating opportunities to flourish in all areas of life. As part of our efforts to make the world a better place, Steed Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine. These endeavors attempt to enhance the human treatment of horses worldwide. Steed Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures great and small flourish abundantly. For resources to enhance your well-being through multifamily real estate investment, connect with us online at capital.steedtalker.com.